Some of us have met. Uh, Michelle, do you want to start that?
Sure. Michelle Boslin. I'm a representative for the Wyndham 3 district in northern Wyndham County. I live in Westminster and also represent Rockingham and Brookline.
Greg Bird. We have Danville and Peacham.
David Durfee. I live in Shaftesbury, down in Bennington County. I represent Shaftesbury, Sunderland, and Glastonbury.
Hi, I'm Leland Morgan. I represent Grand Isle County and the western portion of Milton, where I live.
And Jed Lipsky, Lamoille, Warren, Stowe, where I live.
Richard Nelson, Orleans 1, Town of Derby.
And we may have a committee member, or maybe more than one committee member on Zoom.
Hi, yes, Heather Supernaut, Windsor 4, Barnard, Pomfret, Bridgewater, West Hartford. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather.
And we have our committee assistant. Good. And we are, of course, the House Committee on Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry. If you'd like to begin then, Haley, and tell us, you can introduce yourself and anything else you'd like to say.
Great. Thank you so much. And first off, thank you for your flexibility. The cold is certainly making its way through our office, and both my DC legislative colleague who works on agricultural issues and my Vermont ag colleague also are sick. I'm a little under the weather myself, but hopefully you can hear me okay. My name, for the record, is Haley Perro. I'm Senator Sanders' Outreach Director. I live in Barre and actually grew up in Grand Isle County. As you heard from me, I am based in Vermont, and I am filling in today for my two colleagues who work in agriculture. Again, their names are Ryan Joseph in Vermont and Liam Fagan in our DC office. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I plan to give you an update on the Farm Bill. And I know that Ryan McLaren from Senator Welch's office will be with you today if he's not already, and can delve deeper into areas that you may have questions on.
Ryan is here, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. So let me begin by saying that Senator Sanders believes that the Farm Bill should strengthen sustainable and organic agricultural practices. It should conserve natural resources, prevent food insecurity, support our rural communities, and address the existential threat of climate change. Every time we have an opportunity to authorize a Farm Bill, it's an opportunity to be transformative and meet the needs of the small, diversified, and family farms like the ones we have here in Vermont and New England. As you may know, the most recent Farm Bill was passed into law in 2018. It originally expired on September 30th, 2023, and it has been extended twice so far, once in November 2023, and most recently in December 2024 as part of the continuing resolution to fund the federal government. The current extension covers fiscal years 2025 and the 2025 crop year. Unlike the 2023 extension, the extension that we saw this past December did not provide any mandatory funding for programs that don't have baseline funding. We often hear these impacted programs referred to as orphan programs, and they are often a concern for farmers and producers when there's a Farm Bill extension. They cover a range of areas and include important research, conservation, energy, and rural economic development programs. Beyond programs that are not funded, we just know that farmers tend to face difficulties when a Farm Bill is extended rather than reauthorized. And one of the issues we hear most often is that farms hit their per Farm Bill payment limits under certain programs like EQIP and CSP. And these loss of payments for many farmers can mean a real loss of income. Under the current extension, farmers are also using programs that are sometimes outdated. They were designed 5 or more years ago, and they don't necessarily address current needs. We understand those needs can change quickly, so it's really critical that Congress make sure that the Farm Bill is up to date so it can best serve farmers and the public. And while Congress did not ultimately pass a Farm Bill last session, and that would be the 2-year cycle that included 2023 and 2024, we have seen some movements in both the House and the Senate. The House Agriculture Committee passed a Farm Bill out of committee in May of 2024, but it did not receive consideration or a vote on the House floor. On the Senate side, Senate Democrats, who were the majority last Congress, released a framework in May 2024, introduced a bill in November, but that committee did not hold a markup and the bill did not receive consideration or vote by the full Senate. As a member of the Senate Agriculture Committee, Senator Welch's office may be able to provide more additional details on this. And although votes did not occur in either chamber, the work that was done so far did offer a window into thinking of both parties. Unsurprisingly, disagreement centered on where to direct a limited amount of funding, and major sticking points include a provision that SNAP, or the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program, and a provision on the use of the Inflation Reduction Act conservation funding be reconsidered. We did testify in Senate Ag this morning, and Ryan had some updates there on SNAP, so I will leave that to him. We expect that some of these issues will continue in the new Congress, both in the new Farm Bill and possibly in reconciliation. That's the fast track budget process Congress uses to get a 60-vote majority threshold, or excuse me, to get around the normal 60-vote majority threshold needed in the Senate. Initially, we had seen proposals by Republicans in the House to cut SNAP by up to $274 billion. There are also newer issues, and we don't yet know the full impacts of those. Those could include the proposed tariffs and what they'll need for the agricultural economy. That'll certainly be upfront in this year's negotiations. And then, while not directly addressed in the Farm Bill, farm labor, including migrant workers, will also likely impact negotiations. Functionally, the House is running on a slimmer majority than in the Congress, and nearly 60% of the members in both chambers have never voted on a farm bill before. So we have seen some, changes in leadership and people's familiarity with the Farm Bill, which could, mean additional hurdles to a smooth and swift process. For Senator Sanders' part, he'll continue pressing the needs of Vermont farmers in this process. He wants to ensure that dairy farmers are protected against volatile feed and milk costs, that farmland stay farmland for new and existing farmers, and that small and medium-sized farms are protected against further consolidation and corporate power in the industry, and that regional infrastructure like food hubs and cooperatives can thrive. Importantly, he also recognizes that our current safety net is just frankly designed for much larger monoculture commodity production that doesn't exist in the Northeast. We saw that with the federal crop insurance program and disaster relief programs after flooding. Senator Welch has a bill on that, the Weather Act, which Senator Sanders has also co-sponsored. And these are just a few of the issues we're kind of seeing will be prominent with the Farm Bill and agricultural policies going forward. It's certainly a chaotic time, and we'll continue to work as a delegation to press the state's need to Congress. And just want to thank you all and the larger agricultural community in Vermont for being so strong and organized and letting us know what's important to Vermonters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haley. So we've got three members of the delegation here. I will keep an eye on the clock because I want to make sure that we have time to hear from everyone. I think we have a few minutes if there are questions for Senator Sanders' office.
I have questions that maybe all three would want to answer, and
Why don't we
want to
wait
hear
then?
from the
Okay.
three and then
Yeah.
fire away.
Ryan, do you want to
Yeah, sure.
join us? Thank you.
Hello, folks. My name is Ryan McLaren. I'm a senior advisor for Senator Peter Welch, and do our ag outreach here in Vermont. So it's great to be with y'all. And Haley covered a lot, so I will just add some of the highlights that are maybe slightly different on our end. Not different, but unique to Peter. Peter is on the Senate Agriculture Committee, and as Haley mentioned, we failed to pass a farm bill, a new farm bill. You extended it for a year, which certainly is a disappointment to us. And there are a number of good things that were included in the Senate. Democrats version of the Farm Bill that was put together last year. And amongst them were some of Peter's priorities. Like when we were thinking about what was most important to Vermont, we came up with 5 sort of key focus areas, which was dairy. And amongst dairy is continuing the amazing work of the Dairy Business Innovation Center that is hosted over at the Agency of Ag. That's been universally well received, it seems like, by farmers of all kinds, and has been really important for dairy in general in the state. Improving the dairy margin coverage program, and generally people seem pretty happy these days with that. Where the coverage levels are, what they're paying for, the price of milk, frankly, is okay, and inputs are down. But there are some small tweaks we're going to make there. The Whole Milk Healthy Kids Act, which would allow for the sale of whole milk in schools, amongst other things, and dairy alternatives for folks that have allergies. So Peter was a lead sponsor in the Senate side last year. It passed in the House and did not come up for a vote in the Senate. But is as likely as ever actually to pass now, or at least to get voted on. So that's positive. That's sort of the dairy bucket. Maintaining our support for organic agriculture and integrity in the National Organic Program is a focus Peter's had for a long time. Vermont farmers, like in Senator Leahy, frankly, truly built that program, created that program. The organic brand is a function of advocacy by Vermonters. And it's been diluted, frankly, over the years by much larger production facilities in Texas and California that fundamentally can't meet organic standards based on the size and scale and what's required. And so ensuring that Vermont farmers aren't disadvantaged by lax enforcement of the organic standards is a really important part of what we try to do in our work. And just building systems that support Vermont scale agriculture is that's part of it. Because even in all the, Vermont and New England are unique in this world in some ways. Supporting local food, that's tied into organic, but local food and farm to school is another priority for us, finding ways to make it easier for students to, buy whole milk, but drink whole milk that's produced down the road by someone in their neighborhood, and closing the loop, making it much smaller, closer connections to the people that are growing and making our food. Everyone seems to want it. It's more like, can we get out of the way on the federal level in the school lunch program and make it accessible to actual people on the ground in these school districts. And then Haley touched on the SNAP and hunger programs that are an essential part of the Farm Bill, essential part of making sure the Farm Bill continues and passes. Frankly, it's one of the reasons it's been so bipartisan. So and there's been efforts over the years to sort of decouple the agriculture part from the food and nutrition part, and that it is not really a recipe for success. And so continuing to support the critical programs that help feed Vermonters is WIC, and improving them. And they have some of the same challenges with the school lunch program, where accessibility and ease of use is a real problem. And so trying to make it easier for folks to get in the program, stay in the program, and get out of the program is an important part of the work we're doing. And then all our work through NRCS and some of the water quality and environmental protection work is critical. Though the federal government has made huge investments in the essential work that farmers are doing to make sure that their farm operations don't impact the lakes, the streams, and they are a lot of progress has been made. A lot of that investment has been federal money because we have the resources to do it and are committed to improving the environment and making sure farmers have the resources they need to steward the land. And that's under threat right now, frankly, in the new administration, and will be harder where there's some uncertainty around how we can spend that money and where it'll go that we'll have to figure out in the next few weeks. That's the Farm Bill in general. And there's a lot of other things included there, but that we can talk about if you're interested, but I'll stop there. Peter is also the ranking member on the Agriculture Committee's subcommittee on rural development and credit. And so that is the USDA rural development bucket that covers a wide swath of really infrastructure investments in rural communities to help them thrive. That's water, childcare, housing. They give out direct mortgages in rural communities. And so it has a lot of potential and is sort of underutilized in a lot of ways. Community facilities grants, that's USDA rural development. So sometimes we'll build libraries or town halls, and it is understaffed, under-resourced, and desperately needed to help support rural communities across Vermont. And so it's a way it will continue to be an area of focus for Peter in, supporting rural ways of life, which is harder and harder. And Peter's also on the Finance Committee, so all the tax conversation will come through that committee and reconciliation. So we're that's new for us. And so we're looking at creative ways to potentially incentivize access to farmland or to keep working lands working and allow young farmers the opportunity to purchase lands and not be priced out, particularly in places like the Northeast where that land is at a premium and it's hard to come by. And so we're thinking through what are ways we can support ag and tax policy, which is sort of a new area for us. And hopefully we'll have some things to show you as they shake out. And then the tariff conversation is also happening there. Peter's going to be talking to the U.S. Trade, the nominee to be the U.S. Trade representative on Thursday. They'll be in front of the committee. And so, Canada's right there. It's a big conversation.
Mexico's down there and they're the largest dairy trade partners in this country.
Yeah. And so that will have an impact on our agricultural economy, full stop. And so trying to advocate for Vermont in that conversation is essential. So we'll see where that goes. And then I'll flag 3 other things. Peter's also on judiciary and the Judiciary Committee. So a lot of the conversation around our migrant workforce will come through that committee. And Peter's heard throughout the years that the system we have doesn't work, that we need farm workers and to make our dairy economy run, and that there's got to be a better solution to basically doing nothing, which is what we've done so far. And so we are very interested in engaging in a productive conversation that hopefully is bipartisan, that can give farm workers a lawful status, a program to be in, some worker protections that come with being legal in a legal program, like H-2A or something like it. And that also gives dairy farmers access to the labor force they need to make sure that the cows are milked. And we know immigration will be a lively conversation. And so we're trying to carve out some areas of real bipartisan productivity where there seems to be a consensus around the need for something better and trying to work towards that in a way that is aligned with the dairy community here, what the needs are for both farmers and farm workers. And then the last thing I'll mention is just disaster relief. The Agency of Agriculture was, and Haley probably mentioned this. No, she's still on. Nope. But the Agency of Agriculture we just did a big disaster supplemental. There's a big tranche of money for small state block grants for disaster relief. We were anticipating a large, a chunk of money landing at the Agency of Ag to do disaster relief. That didn't happen before the change of administration, so we don't know exactly when that will happen. We believe it will, it should. We'll fight to make sure it does. But it's kind of a big deal and it's a lot of money and it could go a long way for folks, a really long way for folks that were impacted in the last 2 summers. There's a lot of programs that don't work for folks. We know that the sort of federal crop insurance programs often don't work. If you're growing corn to feed your cow, like that is sort of under supported it's not, you're not growing it to be a commodity. You're growing it to feed your cows. It's a different thing. And if you lose it in the field, it's harder to get paid for.
You lose it.
You lose it. And so that pot of money could help compensate for some of those things in a way that's much more flexible than the current federal crop insurance programs. And then,
Sorry, Representative Bosland had a question.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so just related to what you're talking about,
Yeah.
I believe, and I think this is the same thing you're talking about. We had somebody come in on a statewide level and
Yeah.
talk about some funds that were coming in. I think it was 60 some million dollars from, and it was going to go towards farmers from 23, 24 who had weather related crises. So it could be the
Yeah.
freeze that happened. It could be flood
Yes.
related. So now you just said the money didn't come through. Is that the same pot?
I believe
Is
so.
there, because we were led to believe that the money was here and it was going to be distributed. And now you're sounding more tentative about it.
Well, you might know more than I do, frankly.
Okay,
I had not heard a number.
yep. I think it was 67 or 64 million.
Or it's 83, but
It was a double-digit number.
It was in the tens of millions.
Oh, wait, maybe Haley knows.
Oh, Haley knows.
I don't know for certain, but as far as just regular CDBG DR, the kind of
Oh.
biggest block of disaster relief funding, that is about 67 million. It still may be different than what you're talking about because it's not specific to agriculture. But just when you said 60 something million, I wondered if it may be that program.
Okay, well, we were told in particular about, it was going to be funds that were for farmers who had had losses,
Mhm.
23 or 24.
Mhm.
And basically the ones that were named were the late freeze that happened in May.
Yeah.
Or flooding.
Anything that was a
Yeah.
federal disaster
Yeah.
on the USDA side.
Okay, so-
It'd be those 3 things.
So it might be those are coming, but maybe,
I don't know who was speaking to it. If it was the agency,
it was.
they might have, they know more. They're the ones interacting with USDA. So if they have it, I would believe them. I hadn't heard that from them yet. And I don't know, I hadn't heard a number either.
They didn't have it, it was coming. And this was one of our earlier testimonies before January 20th.
Yeah. So I think they had some confidence it was coming and I don't know that
okay,
it is here.
okay.
Regardless, all of that sounds like what we understood.
Yeah.
The range of money,
Yeah.
what its intended use is. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of.
So I should wait to tell my farmer constituents about.
Maybe, but it's worth, and we can
Double check with the agency.
I need to check with the agency too, because I want
I
to
would
know.
love to hear back, because I have some people
Yeah.
that were very impacted that would
Right.
very much like to know about that.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's, we've been fighting this fight on disaster relief for a long time, and we I don't want to say no one wins in this, but like if we were successful in getting this disaster supplemental passed, it's been an emphasis for Peter, and we need the money to show up after all that work. Like the idea that it wouldn't show up now is sort of unacceptable. So if it's not coming, we will be like jumping into action to make sure it gets here as fast as it can. But it's a huge pot of money. And it's really needed. So and quite flexible. And so that is great. And then on the in the Senate version of the Farm Bill, Haley mentioned the Weather Act, which is a bill Peter wrote essentially to it creates an index insurance product within USDA that sort of is meant to address the gap in like the usefulness of insurance for a lot of Vermont's small and diversified farms. So it would index an insurance payment to a disaster. So if there's a disaster in your area, it's sort of assumed you had losses and you're not going through and like counting individual carrots. It's like, how many carrots did I lose and how many carrots did I plant and can I get paid for that when you grow, when you're selling it, you're not growing a commodity crop that becomes less useful. And so finding ways to pay farmers based on their income and profitability and losses that they incur on that and not individual commodities is important.
Representative Nelson,
Thank you,
and then
Chairman.
maybe we'll switch.
Yeah.
I'm a dairy farmer by trade.
Really?
When I'm not here, yeah.
Yeah.
And Senator Welch and I have had conversations and I appreciate him reaching out and being available.
Yeah.
The Farm Bill, 85% of it goes for feeding people, 15% of it goes back into the dirt. Okay, that's typically the makeup of it, thereabouts. Those of us that know anything have no problems with that. That's how you get the urban people and the rural people to come together for the greater good of the country.
Right.
Okay, so I support that. Two concerns I have, the $450,000 maximum per farm doesn't work in 2024, 2025 pricing. Okay, it doesn't work in the structures that we need to put in for climate resiliency costs a lot of money.
Right.
So, would like to see that doubled.
Yeah.
We heard rumor of it. Don't know if it's true or not. Maybe it was wishful thinking. And the other part I have, are we gonna keep the EBT card going? That's so vital for our feeding our people that are underserved or challenged, or what's the word I'm looking for, Chairman? Vulnerable people.
Yeah, are you thinking of the SNAP program?
Yeah, SNAP, yeah, EBT SNAP, and the free and reduced lunch meals. Is that part of the Farm Bill, and is that gonna stay intact? It's so vital to feeding our kids in this state.
It's not part of the Farm Bill. It's part of the Child Nutrition Act. And I'm looking up at Haley, but she's not here. So they've carved it out essentially. Both Peter and Bernie wrote a universal meals bill that Peter is a co-sponsor of and supports. And so agree with you. There's a million problems with the sort of free and reduced lunch program, but it's essential and we'd like to expand it. You want?
And if they need someone to testify on making H-2A or a worker visa program, I'm your man, and
Yeah,
I'll
we
bring a short stick this long to whack the one side of the head that don't get it.
I'm gonna call you.
Don't bring your stick.
And I don't want to take up Haley's time, but the cap we hear about all the time, inflation's real and not just, it's real for farmers too. I think you should call NRCS and see, it might not have carried over. We might be in a period where the cap does not apply because the Farm Bill,
What,
it was not,
what's what I've been hearing.
was extended. And not in a sort of like across the board way that would keep everything sort of consistent. So there might be a window of investment now where that cap wouldn't apply and you can get back in before the next Farm Bill.
Yeah, I thought about it. I don't need them on speed dial. I have the number
Yeah,
memorized.
right. All right, I'll move on so you can talk to Todd.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you, Haley, as well.
Are you gonna stick around for?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
I'll
I was gonna
Park
ask you
myself
something
over
after.
here, yeah.
All right, so next up, Thomas Renner, who is, I don't know whether you're based here in Vermont.
I am, yeah, in Burlington.
Zone Balance Office.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. So, I'm a community liaison for the Congresswoman, and one of the areas that I cover is agriculture. So very happy to be here. My Senate colleagues really covered the meat and the potatoes, but let me talk a little bit about what's going on in the House because it is a very different body than the U.S. Senate. So Chairman Thompson hasn't called any hearings yet in the House, so they haven't actually done any work in the Agriculture Committee. I believe that's because there hasn't been an appointment of a secretary, and once the secretary is appointed in the Senate, which is happening this week, Ryan, or next?
Yeah, we're supposed to vote either late this week or
Yeah.
maybe.
So once that happens, I believe the chairman will probably call his committee together and they'll start working on things. What we're hearing is he doesn't have a timeline yet for the Farm Bill. They're really concerned about tariffs, and that's what they're going to tackle first in House Ag. So both him and the ranking member are very kind of focused on that at the moment. So I think we're going to hear that conversation before we hear anything about the Farm Bill. What the chairman has mentioned, though, is that the Farm Bill that he submitted last year and that went to the Senate is likely going to be what he's going to move forward again this year. That said, he has changed his positioning on SNAP. So previously, the House had been calling to cut the program by $300 million, and he signaled that he doesn't want to do that, actually. So we're looking, hopefully, at maintaining that $300 in SNAP, which, of course, the ranking member also supports. So that was really welcome when we heard that and learned about that. The Congresswoman doesn't sit on agriculture. She sits on judiciary and budget. She tried to get onto agriculture, but with everything coming up, the leader wanted her to maintain on the committees that she's on. That said, she has made it a priority since she was first elected 2 years ago to really get to know the other members who are on the northern border states. And her reason being for that is they have very similar economies that we have. And they're also, many of them are Republican members. So she's been working across the aisle to try to find the similarities that we have in our ag communities. Similar problems of workforce, prices, difficulty to bring folks in, difficulties on housing. So she's been trying to have those conversations so that we can make sure when we do start working on a farm bill that they're keeping in mind many of the things that Ryan and Haley mentioned, the type of agriculture that we have here and what it looks like for our farmers on the ground definitely isn't the same as what it looks like for farmers in the Midwest and in Texas who compromised the majority of the Agriculture Committee in the House, unfortunately. Whole milk, the Congresswoman co-sponsored that bill, so that's going to be voted on either this week or next week, most likely, and then sent over to the Senate. So we're really happy about that. That is one.
Whole milk in schools.
Whole milk in schools, exactly. Yeah. So we're really excited. That is one thing that the chairman wanted to move along before the committee really started doing its work. So we're hoping this week they'll vote on that and send it over to the Senate, which will be exciting, especially as sounds like it might move in the Senate as well. And those are kind of really anything else would just be repeating everything that my colleagues had said. But what I do like to always remind is our offices are always open to your questions or suggestions or anything that you're hearing. So please don't be quiet if there's something that you're hearing in our farm community. There's 3 of us and we try to be everywhere, but we don't always hear what you hear and vice versa. So please keep the conversation open.
Representative Bossum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Becca was here not long ago.
Yeah.
And the focus on her talk was on immigration, but I had to come to committee, so I didn't. But I'm wondering if you could maybe just update a little bit about farm workers and immigration issues and sort of those issues from what you're aware of in terms of.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So, the Congresswoman's perspective is very aligned with the 2 senators. There's a deep understanding that there are these folks here working on our farms or construction sites, many places, right? And doing a good job as well. So we need to have a mechanism that makes their presence here legal. And, many of them are already paying taxes. They're, going to our local stores and supporting the community. So I think many folks, but particularly our delegation, really want to make sure that we are working on a mechanism, whether it be altering an existing visa program or, which would be very difficult, but looking into new programming, to make sure that these people can be here and doing the work that we need them to do. So I've heard from many farmers that they can't do the work that they're doing without many of the folks who are coming from South America. So yeah, and a lot of her press conferences was with the Attorney General and just really focusing on the rights that those folks do currently have. What we've heard from the administration and heard from kind of on the ground is ICE is pursuing folks who have committed different crimes. It seems that mostly pursuing folks with theft, spousal abuse, those types of things. I don't know what it looks like really on the ground, but it seems that the assurance is that folks who are working and being good members of society aren't included in this. Again, I don't know what that looks like actually on the ground for ICE.
I'd be curious if she's heard more things recently, because like I myself, I mean, I was in Brattleboro last weekend and I had somebody tell me her daughter was harassed on a train going to college because she wasn't white and she was asked to prove that she was an American. And if that's happening, this is not a criminal. This was a college student.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's prefaced what we've been told from the administration. We've heard some different things. The Congresswoman was here last week, visited a farm on our northern border in the Northeast Kingdom. Heard some stories from those folks as well. But it's vitally important that the workers are able to do what we need them to do to work on the farms and do the good work that they've been doing.
Senator Lipsky.
Thank you. And to all, Ryan and Haley, we're so grateful for delegation and commitment to Vermonters. And I had a nice opportunity this autumn, 28th of October, to dialogue with how her challenges and what she described is in her first term was the responsibility of bridging the void between blue and red and developing relationships, effective relationships. So we think of the agricultural US, it goes from San Diego to Bangor and from Seattle to Sarasota or wherever.
Exactly.
I would think all farmers, whether you're trying to ship soybeans to China or milk to Mexico, and Vermont's largest trading partner of any country in the world by a factor of at least 5. And, if you consider the Midwest more red, they are still farmers. They're doing the same commodities that Representative Nelson's doing. I would like to hear from you what optimism and collaboration possibilities you're feeling, or Rebecca Ballin is feeling within the House along the agricultural community.
Yeah, I mean, the Congresswoman speaks pretty openly. I think she said during her press conference that the conversations she has with her colleagues in the Republican Party privately are very different than what is then said publicly. And there's a lot of agreement, actually. There's, and especially, if you're a rural community in Wyoming, you're probably experiencing the same things that a rural community in Vermont experiences. So that is the key and the crux of what the Congresswoman was trying to do in her work. She entered in the minority. We continue to be in the minority. So she hasn't had the benefit that our senators have had of knowing what it's like to lead from the majority. So day one, she knew that the only way to really make any change is by finding the commonality. And you find that with the individual members. She's been very precise in making relationships with folk, with representatives who are from rural America. Because, she represents all of Vermont, and obviously there's, we may consider Burlington as a city, but most places would not. So she finds that she has a lot in common with a lot of these other reps, and they may be vehemently different on many issues, but on issues of supporting our rural communities, they tend to be exactly the same. So it's trying to pry that out of them and make sure that they are voting appropriately once they're in committee and on the floor, and remembering their rural communities too. So I think that there's work that really can be done. I cover transportation as well, and the Biden administration did a lot in transportation, so I think that the Trump administration is going to want to meet that, or maybe even do better. So I think there are places that the work will get done, and it's just remembering really the folks that they all represent, and thinking about that, and those conversations are definitely happening. Yeah.
Just a question about with the farm bill. This could be either one of you if you'd like to answer this. Is it tailored to each state, or is it a broad paintbrush for all states? Like, can the money that we receive from the farm bill say, hey, we want X amount of dollars to be from local food
Right.
purchased in state toward the universal meals program, right? That
For the most part, it's like universally tailored, so which is how we end up with programs that really support commodity ag production. So particularly around insurance programs, but there are ways in which it then becomes localized. So like the Farm Service Agency has a person in Vermont that manages Vermont. Same with NRCS. We have a state conservationist. And so like that, if they have a state technical committee that's informed by county committees that sort of understand what conservation, natural resources management looks like to Vermont versus Colorado. So there are pinch points where we can have that conversation, but the big buckets of money tend to be national. And then there are other, like the Dairy Business Innovation Center is regional. So like Vermont has the one for the Northeast because Senator Leahy advocated for it and made sure it existed here.
Yeah.
And so those sort of like regional programs, same is true with like the Northern Border Regional Commission, where like they are empowered to sort of make more localized decisions. And we think that's generally leads to better outcomes, frankly. For Vermont, at the very least, when like we are not, if you look at the median of the United States, like Vermont is not it. Like we are unique in a lot of ways, where it's incredibly small. The landscape's unique, and our challenges all shared in some other places. The scale is often the part that is harder for people to comprehend. So some of those more regional programs address those issues. I mean, we don't have county governments. Like that was a problem during COVID when the federal government's trying to hand out money to county governments, and they come to Vermont and they're like, "There's no one to take this check and give it out." It's like, no, we have villages, and so there's a disconnect there sometimes, but we've found ways to delegate some of that decision making to people that understand.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd echo that. It's one of the reasons why it's so great that we have Senator Welch on the Ag Committee, because he's able to give that perspective of a smaller state and how it happens here.
Yeah.
Without that voice, I think the programs would work not as well.
And honestly, like some of it is flexibility.
Yeah.
Where like we see this in like the school food program, where like the requirements are so rigid, so stringent, that school districts with like the resources of the size that we are dealing with here, it's like too complicated to go through the process of trying to just buy carrots from the person growing carrots down the road, and creating that sort of like tight loop of purchasing that helps Vermont Ag, helps the students, helps their learning, like all that's good, but we're kind of in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I think on both sides there could be a discomfort with some of the flexibility, both in like we don't want to waste money, and we don't want decisions made in Vermont are not maybe the same decisions that will be made in Texas or California. And so we have to be comfortable with both those things. To build in some of that flexibility, I think politically, but we've always been comfortable with that because we're having this conversation about FEMA, like the more local you can sort of add authority and decision making, the better it's gonna be for the community to have some sense of trust in providers to make those decisions for themselves and be good stewards of money. So anyways, it's a philosophical problem, but we try.
You need to bring more maple syrup to Washington and sweeten them up.
Good idea.
Take it what we can get.
Yeah.
I'll just, unless there are other questions, I just wanted to say that we, from time to time, will have constituents reach out with they're in a bind for some reason or another. They know us, but they don't know how to reach their senator, their US senator. So I'll just suggest to the committee that we will distribute contact information for all three of you, if that's right. And if there's a better person within the office, each of your offices who would be a good sort of point person. And I know that you would not necessarily be one who would answer the question ultimately, but we can start with you three. That would be great. Yeah.
That's great.
That's a great pitch we have wonderful casework teams that do not just an ag, but people have issues interacting with the federal government on taxes, on social security benefits, on you name it. That's half of our job. It really is maybe more like we want to help and we can help get an answer when people are struggling. So
Yeah.
And then not just on like USDA stuff on everything. If you hear from people that need help or have struggling with the federal government, they should reach out to any of our offices. We all have great teams.
Ryan,
I was just going to second that. I think it's really important to all of our bosses that we're really accessible, and also no wrong door. You don't need to reach out to all three of us. You can reach out to us. We'll get it to the right people in our office. And then just a reminder that you are our constituents as well. So to the extent that we can help provide information like we're doing today, but also other requests and kind of bring to bear some of the resources like Congressional Research Service, we're happy to do that too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all.
I just wondered, I reached out to Senator Love's office 4 times, say constituents world. It's our biggest responsibility to our constituents, and your collective delegation came through on every issue, and it was it really meant a lot to us as reps, and thank you.
Yeah, very glad to hear it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you all.
And send our regards to